We've got about one more minute before the meeting's gonna get started. What I do ask is that if you are going to participate in the meeting and you're going to come up to the podium and speak, please sign in, know which project you're with, and state your name clearly so they can be included in the minutes. And we are going to be ready to go in, as I said, just about a minute, and we'll turn it over to the vice chairman when the bell rings. So thank you for your patience. We'll be with you in a minute.
Meeting at the approval of the minutes from our last meeting.
Yes. I move we accept them.
All right, there's a motion to accept in a second. All in favor? Old business, there's no old business, new business. Go, Tim.
All right, so the first item under new business is TMS number 13010000107, 810 Wassamasaw Road, zoned NMX, neighborhood mixed use, owned by Maria de la Luz Hernandez and Arsenio Banda Enriquez. Variance request to reduce the required rear yard setback from 5 feet to 3.6 feet and reduce the minimum separation from the adjacent property line from 5 feet to 0 feet. Ordinance section 2.5.3D and section 7.7.3B. So, as was stated in the title, the need for the setback variance was determined due to a code enforcement case for work without a permit. Front porches and paving, as well as the addition of the garage, were all completed without proper acquisition of necessary building permits. Staff feels that the applicant does not meet all 4 criteria and that a hardship is not present. Extraordinary conditions do not exist on the property. A smaller garage could potentially have met the 5-foot rear setback. The mobile home, having been placed on the property at almost 40 feet from the front property line, could be considered an inherited issue. But if the owner or contractor had verified required setbacks and obtained permits prior to starting work, it may have been possible to meet the required setback. The property owner acquired the property with the fence in its current position. The fence at the front of the yard is 13 feet off the property line in the adjacent property's front yard. Without a survey, any homeowner would have assumed that the fence was on the property line and that it would have been safe to pave the drive at its current location. And I'll show the layout in just a moment. Other property in the area do have similar conditions, but each lot is unique. Utilization of the property is not eliminated due to the setbacks or required separation from the property line for the driveway, but it would be hampered and a smaller structure would have been required, and less maneuverability would be possible to get into the garage. Detriment will not be caused to other properties by the issuance of this variance on this property. Based on the above review of the criteria, if the board chooses to approve a variance for the setback and driveway, staff does recommend the following condition: that any concrete not located wholly on the owner's property be removed no more than 30 days from the decision by the board. So what I'll do is I will scroll to the plan. This is a survey of the current situation. The homeowners purchased the modular home, well, it's actually a mobile home. A couple years ago, and they have, as stated earlier, constructed a covered porch on the front, as well as attached a two-car garage at the back and paved the front yard for a circular drive. There were two existing access points originally and gravel drive, those that has since been updated. The driveway extends across the property line about a foot and a half. And there's concrete at the back that extends over the property line. And then the setback here for the structure, it should be 5 feet, not 3.6. So I know that the applicant is here and they do have a translator here as a representative for them to be able to address the board. If you have any questions, we can turn it over to the applicant, or if you have any questions of me, I'm happy to take them.
Tim, I have a question for you. Why are we not talking about permeability here?
That is a fun one. The zoning district in which this is located has an 80% lot coverage limit. They're at 78%. Can't count the paving that is not on their property. So not that that would have taken them very far over, but I don't think that would have been one I would have brought forward. I would have just said, you know, you're at 82% or whatever the case may be, just cut it back. You don't need that much paving. You know, there are locations on this plan where it would have been possible to do so. But nonetheless, after 3 rounds of review of the plat that was provided, this is what we've determined their lot coverage to be based on a current survey that was done recently.
Another question for you, Tim. If we turn down this appeal, what happens to the concrete on the neighbor's property? Is that an enforceable issue? Obviously, it would be by civil measures by the neighbor, but.
So there's a couple of things at play here. This is just the zoning issue as it relates to the property. Building code does not apply to a mobile home. They are built under a different standard, and this garage is actually attached to the structure. I had a conversation with the building official just 20 minutes ago. He has not yet received documents from an engineer stating that the connection between the mobile home and the stick-built garage meets requirements. That aspect has not been addressed. So there may still be modifications needed to either the mobile home or the structure to remove the overlapping roof that is on the mobile home. As far as enforcement goes, on the concrete part of it, we wouldn't have a lot to go on because it would be more along the lines of a private property issue, because that is, they do not exceed the lot coverage limit setbacks as far as that goes. Technically, we'd have to figure out a way to address the required setback either by altering the building and making that meet the required 5 foot. But I do want to stress that your approval of these variances does not provide approval for the building permit to be issued and for this to be considered approved overall by the town. There are still outstanding issues that need to be addressed. It can be handled one way or the other. I mean, really, it would not be relevant to the building official if he decides that the whole thing needs to be removed. You know, or if he has to force them to do modifications to the garage to take the overlapping roof structure off of the mobile home. That's not going to impact the setback or the separation from the property line for the driveway. So if they had been able to obtain the engineer's letter before the meeting, that would have been great. Then we could have said, hey, you know, as it's constituted right now, it's fine, or no, they need to change X, Y, and Z. We are still needing to address these two other issues that are not related to the actual physical structure and how they're connected.
In the package, there was a contract from the builder or the
Mhm.
person that was constructing the garage. Can you bring that up for me?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Under 6, the
Sorry.
paragraph 6, where it was the contractor was to obtain the permits and licenses, were any requested or applied for?
They were done after the fact. As I said, this was a code enforcement identified project that was started prior to permits being applied for. Now, is that contractor or homeowner? Ultimately, it is the homeowner's responsibility to verify that appropriate permits are obtained prior to commencement of work. But, you know, we have to rely on what's provided to us, and, you know, we don't really deal with that part or that side of the equation per se. Obviously, they've provided some documentation that there was supposed to be, and they just weren't obtained. Right now, the application is on hold pending zoning approval, as well as waiting for, as I said, the aforementioned engineer's letter concerning that attachment. If you would like to address the board concerning any of it,
Tim, what does the top of the next page say? Doesn't say anything.
nope,
Looked like there was a sentence cut off.
no, I don't believe anything carried over. This is, you know, kind of,
What's page 13 in your packet?
page 13 is part of the deed.
Okay.
That was the very end, and that is what confirms it being a mobile home.
Looking to see those part
Yeah.
that was cut off.
Absolutely. But it does resolve the zoning issue.
We just wanted to know that we are working on the engineer, to get his approval on it, because we've been having trouble reaching the contractor because he's out of town for a little while. He had a family emergency. Also, she has been living in that house for a lot longer than when the purchase was completed. She financed it in-house with the owner, and she's been living there since, 2006. So it's been quite a long time, and the fence has always been where it is. So they automatically assume that that was their property line. That doesn't excuse it, it's just what they thought. But yes, they are looking to get the variance, on the setback for the garage, which is a small area in the back, and the concrete that was put down up to the fence.
Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Was the concrete laid down? The garage, when was the garage built and the concrete laid down?
It was identified by the town last year.
But at the same time, I mean, the concrete was laid down at the same time, more or less, as the garage was built.
No. It's been only a year approximately the garage was done. The concrete was laid way prior.
So the permits were not approved or obtained.
They're still pending.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
Quick question, Tim. Since this has been posted, have you had any response from any neighbors or adjacent landowners?
No, we've not received any phone calls, any emails, inquiries concerning this case.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
There's been a motion to approve.
I'll second it so we can discuss it.
All right, there's a second. Discussion?
It's hard to see how, I mean, we are bound by those four, the four rules. We got to meet that standard to approve a variance, and it's hard. It's hard to see how we can say we met that as a matter of fact. I recognize that this not approving it is going to be a massive hardship on the landowner, but I mean, you build a driveway on your neighbor's yard, it's a problem.
And I tend to agree. Yeah, I understand. Even if the neighbor doesn't have a problem.
Tim, would we, if we were so inclined, could we approve the variance on the rear lot line and not on the driveway?
Yeah. They can be taken separately. It is the board's within the board's authority to approve the request, deny the request, or approve the request with modifications
With conditions.
or conditions. So as long as you can identify an extraordinary condition that doesn't apply to other properties, that the utilization of the property will be greatly diminished by the application of the zoning ordinance, and that it will cause no detriment to other property, you can approve a variance, even if my evaluation says that there isn't, right? It doesn't. If you all identify them, please tell me what that hardship is, how they meet those criteria, so that it can be addressed appropriately.
And if we approve the variances that we've been talking about, if they sell the property, that approval doesn't go with the property, does it?
It goes with the property. It's in perpetuity.
So whoever bought
That's why we need these findings of fact. Because it is on the property and it's fully transferable. It's not just for these property owners. It isn't like many of the other, or like a special exception or some of the other things that may come through the board. The variance sticks with the property.
Yeah, although Don, you'll recall that on several of the issues that have come before us with driveways over by Highway 78, we've said it's approved here. If the property gets sold, it's not. Tim, could you back that up and show us the overhead?
Do you want the aerial photo?
Yeah, arguably what's unique about this property is it's much shallower than anything else there.
Okay, we've in discussion. Is there, got, I'm sorry.
Spotted with the fence. So when they did their property line, they thought they were staying
I-
in the property line. They didn't
I-
need to go into somebody else's. But if need be, we might be able to speak to the neighbor and see if they're okay with what's there and work something out. Is the concrete over? Shouldn't it, if it needs to be?
Well, our requirement is that that driveway needs to be 5 feet off the property line. So if they choose to reduce that to 0, there's still the issue of it overlapping. And it's staff's recommendation that any concrete that is not wholly located on the property be removed. So if the board conditions that, that would be what would be required to meet the zoning requirements. Now, if the board chooses to modify that recommended, that with written approval, notarized letter from the adjacent property owner, that they would allow it to stay. I mean, the biggest problem is for us is that that property owner may not always be the property owner, and future property owners may have a problem with it. So that to clear that issue for both the current property owner of both properties, the best outcome is to have it removed completely.
Or get the adjacent landowner to sell a strip
You could,
of the property.
as long as the adjacent property would be able to meet all of the required
Right.
zoning.
I think we can make a reasonable case to accept the variance on the rear property. That's this property is not very deep. 3.6 versus 5, it's not a big deal. It's not gonna be much of an impact on the neighbors. I don't see how we can justify the driveway. So a possibility would be to just vote this particular motion down and then, oh, sorry.
You following all this, Tim?
Yeah,
Okay.
plus it's being recorded, so I'll be able to go back and rewatch it.
And then ask for a motion, somebody move that we accept. Or
So
the,
you're gonna modify the original motion to approve. You wanna do that, Lionel?
I can't talk.
Why?
Tell me one more time.
John will tell you.
I'm suggesting Lionel that. I don't see how we can justify the variance on the driveway. I think we can justify a variance on the back line and the garage, so I don't know what's the right way to handle it, revise the motion or vote that down and have another motion.
Because the vote hasn't been taken, you can still modify the original motion. Obviously, that would have to be approved by you all to make that modification. Somebody has to clearly state it so that we can do that, and then you can have another vote on the modified motion.
Can you state the modification, John, please?
My motion would be that we approve a variance for the rear lot line, but not approve variance on the side lot line of the driveway.
All right, so that's a modified motion. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Well, it was passed.
Thank you. I'll be in contact. I'll let you know as we go forward what is going to need to be done to get that done. Thank you.
The next thing on the agenda,
Next item on the agenda is TMS numbers 13709022127 through 13709022139. That would be lots 15 through 27 and lots 1 through 14 on TMS 13709020007. Pineland Village, Zone GR5 General Residential, owned by Center Park Homes. Variance request to reduce the minimum separation from the adjacent property line from 5 feet to 1 foot, ordinance section 7.7.3B. It was discovered at the time of permitting for the after about 4 homes had already been permitted, that the proposed location for the driveways were not meeting the required setback of 5 feet from the property line. To explain that requirement, that is put in for stormwater purposes, so that your impervious surfaces aren't dumping stormwater onto adjacent properties. Give some room for that to happen. Instead of coming in for individual properties and lots, the applicant, who I do not see, chose to request a blanket variance for the overall subdivision to allow the driveways to be constructed at 1 foot as opposed to the required 5 feet from the property line. So that would affect lots 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 25, 26, and 27. As I said, I think these 5 here, which include the model and a couple that are either under construction or currently occupied by residents, to remain as is. That was staff error on not catching that earlier. Lots 1 through 14, which would be a future phase, would also have that variance applied, and they would be able to be built to within 1 foot of the property line. Now, staff's review of it is as follows. Staff feels that the applicant does not meet all 4 criteria and that a hardship is not present. Extraordinary conditions do not exist on the property based on the provided exhibit. Buildings are shown centered in the building envelope. It is possible to get more space by moving the house closer to the property line that does not have the driveway. Other property in the area do have similar conditions, but each lot is unique. The separation from the property line is intended to provide an area for stormwater to drain from an impervious surface onto the same property, not to run onto adjacent properties. C, utilization of the property is not eliminated due to the required separation from the property line for the driveway, but it would be hampered, and future homeowners may have difficulty navigating a curved driveway backing into the public right-of-way. And D, detriment will not be caused to other properties by the issuance of this variance on this property. So that's staff's evaluation on it. The builder, I don't believe, is here. It looks like there are some concerned people who may want to speak on it. If the board has questions.
Tim, I have a question for you. That the 4th element of staff's evaluation there. doesn't relate to property lot 8 versus 9. It relates to neighbors that aren't part of this at all. Is that
It's,
correct? I mean, clearly,
that one's really tough in this situation. Because, you know, if you look at how traditional development has happened over the years, there are shared driveways, there are driveways that go property lines, there, you know, in this area and older parts of town that were developed prior to cars, driveways were just put in where they fit, you know, where people access their lots. Can detriment be caused? You could make a case that stormwater being pushed from one property to another would have a negative and a detrimental effect.
I mean, that is the point of the zoning rule. So I mean, arguably, if you look at lot 8 and 9, driveway on lot 9 where it is will arguably have a detrimental effect on lot 8 and vice versa.
Yeah, so the ones where the 8 and 9, 1 and 2, 5 and 5 and 6 is less because they do have that intervening path to the open space for the development. 12 and 13, 19 and 20, 26 and 27. Those are the ones where it's definitely going to be harder to meet it, and you are going to be pushing that water onto each other, so to speak.
Right.
Now, there is a caveat within the ordinance, same section, that does not apply this separation to shared driveways. But shared driveways create a whole different can of worms that many owners, homeowners associations, and builders don't want to deal with. And that is people sharing a driveway. At least there's no snow. But sorry. That being said, I struggled with whether or not there would be a detriment because it's just these two streets in between Germantown and Waring Street where they're interacting with each other.
Right.
So
So arguably it won't have a detriment on somebody across Germantown Road.
I don't believe that would be the case. As you can see from the layout, there's stormwater management ponds in the middle, as well as to the lower right along Waring Street. There's also the open space that is further down on Waring Street. Waring Street is a very narrow, it actually goes down to one-way traffic.
Yeah.
It has ditches, and maintenance of those is on stormwater here at the town. And there's been intermittent flooding issues. It's everywhere within the town of Somerville. We do need to be conscious of that. And that is, as I said, why we built that separation into the ordinance when we approved it in 2019.
Is there any thought of widening Waring Street?
If they haven't done it yet with the
this?
approval of this subdivision, there's no chance. Really, I mean, you'd be taking, I think it's no more than a 30-foot right of way right now, which, I mean, really you need minimum 40 to get an adequate road with appropriate, right of way on either side. You can squeeze a narrow road onto a 30-foot right of way, as you can see, but it's narrower in some spots.
Does this request that you may have made it clear in your statement and I missed it, but does this, the ones that are already built this way, does this particular variance request cover those, or would that be a separate request required? So
those property owners did not, I don't believe were afforded the option to be included in the variance. What we decided to do would be to handle it as a non-conforming situation. It was built before we caught it. We wouldn't force somebody to cut their driveway back. But if they came in and wanted a variance for something else, or they wanted to add more paving or something along those lines, which most of these lots are already at their lot coverage limits. Some of them have restrictions, they can only have gravel driveways. So it's gonna be tough for future property owners in this neighborhood to contend with that. So doing this to provide some relief can be potentially beneficial, just to give some space for those driveways. I mean, otherwise you're gonna push the houses one way, push the driveway right next to it. Anybody have a 15-year-old driver? I mean, that's a scary thought in my mind. So, it's my opinion that though there may not be a overarching hardship overall, and that they could go back and redesign the layouts, this is not, because they are still maintaining 1 foot. It's not like the last one.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody here tonight want to say things? Come ahead, please, and sign in. Just sign that piece of paper with your name and.
My name is Yelbra Winkle and I reside at, or I'm the homeowner at 100 Tallow Street, which is where this first road will lead down to. I'm on the end right there by Shepherd Street. We have major flooding on Shepherd Street. I have major flooding in my yard, and in the home next to me has been flooding for years and years and years. I mean, it goes all the way up to their steps. And so anything that's going to cause any more flooding, it's going to come right down to us. My yard today, after all the sun and all the time, is actually very, very wet on the left side of it. And this could be a problem. On the other side, next to that pond, the neighbor who lived right next to that had major flooding in his yard after all of this was cleared, and and before they were even doing much building, but they cleared it and they had to dig that pond deeper, but he was having major problems with flooding there as well. So I have concerns about that. I didn't plan to come and speak up. I wasn't sure exactly what this was with the 1 foot variance. Didn't know it would be all of the neighbors there. And in between our homes on Shepherd Street, our homes are generally about 1/4 of an acre each. And in between our homes there, even with drainage in between the homes, is very, very difficult. But with 1 foot, that's going to make a French drain or whatever really, really difficult. But I just wanted to share that concern because it could definitely impact my home, at 100 Tallow, because everything from our street goes down and goes into the yard next to me, and then goes into my yard and then into the street. There were also there's also drainage on the side of my home that I didn't realize was even there until I moved in there, because it was covered with pine straw. But I've got like a raised driveway, and my husband and I were going to have like a step or something put down there because it was dangerous. When we pulled all that out, we realized there was a grate immediately next to my driveway and my garage. Immediately there. I don't know how that would be possible who have been approved in the beginning, but it's alarming, and that always fills up. As do the grates to the side of my yard that go right out there by Shepherd Street. But Shepherd Street and Waring, where we are very, very narrow. If I'm going down that street, before I turn on it, I wait to make sure other cars have passed, because it's really almost impossible to pass unless you're pulling over on someone else's property. Personally, I think they should each be one-way streets. And Shepherd Street as well is in great need of traffic bumps, so that traffic in the evening would slow down. But anyway, that's all the time I'm going to take for you. These are some other neighbors that live nearby. I don't know if they would like to speak or not, but thank you for listening to me.
And I just want to make sure that we're clear as to what is before us. We're not determining whether they can cover a lot with the driveway. It's just where they can place that driveway.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is GR5. They are permitted 35% lot coverage. With this, and they meet the minimum lot size requirements. They're smaller than the neighbors' lots. Minimum lot size in GR5 is 8,500 square feet. You know, a quarter acre is, 10,000 plus. So they're comparatively smaller than some of the lots in the area, but they meet zoning requirements for single-family residential lots. And there is one of the few developments that has come in recently that hasn't requested variances on lot coverage, on other setbacks, or requested a zoning change to something else that would allow even smaller lots than what are here. It is designed with detached garages, which is a more traditional neighborhood design. So it's it's ticking off many of the boxes of the aesthetic of what some of this area and how it was developed before. The loss of trees and whatnot is definitely a concern, but engineering being what it is, and stormwater requirements being what they are here in town, this was designed so that it's not supposed to exceed the runoff that was before development. It's supposed to be equal to. So the calculations say that's what it does. I don't live in the neighborhood. I can't say one way or the other, but flooding is always exacerbated by upstream development. It pushes it further down, and or it slows it down downstream and pushes it back up. Water is just difficult. So.
Tim, did I understand you to say if a couple of feet that could be done,
Yeah, let me,
that would help the situation?
so if you look at this plot plan and you can see this house, the dark line here, that's the footprints of the house. This one, not a good example. Sorry. There are a couple of them in here. Let me. So. So like 27, if I'm reading this plot plan right, that one's there. I can't, why do they have these multiple boxes? I looked at one when I was doing this where you could clearly see, you know what that is? That is your eaves and overhangs, is that what that is? This computer can't handle it, so give it a second. Maybe that statement was wrong because the way I'm reading this now, unless I'm completely wrong, typically when you take a lot, you have your setbacks, that gives you your building envelope. Depending on the size of the house, you can shift it around within that envelope to give you more room on one side or another. It looks like most of them have been shifted to meet that. And that second dashed line would represent eaves and overhangs that might be, which are permitted obstructions of the setbacks. So it looks like they may have optimized that layout so that these houses are actually on it, and they have shifted them all. Just looking at the layouts now closer, I apologize, I misread the plot plan, but there's a lot going on with these. So to address that, my original statement, I'm going to retract. They don't have much wiggle room, if any.
My microphone's working. The exhibit that we're at, is that assuming that those houses are at the max? They go, there's about, 1,000 square foot difference between sizes. So is this just assuming that they're all built at the 2,400 square foot size?
Yeah, that probably is. And that would assume that most of their models have the same or similar footprint, which is often the case, even if they have a 2,000 square foot model and 1,000 square foot model, ranch versus a 2-story, that can happen very often. It looks like all of them have a very similar floor plan, or they're just using the same one that maxes out that building envelope.
Tim, I'm kind of hearing. I guess I don't want to ask you to try and substitute your judgment for ours because at this meeting, but I'm kind of hearing you say you thought this was pretty good design. I have to say, when I look at this, I say the first thing that struck me is the property owner designed lots to maximize whatever they wanted to maximize without consideration of how they're going to meet zoning rules here. If they had laid it out differently so that lots weren't so narrow, and they would not have this problem.
This
Perhaps.
particular property went through at least 3 to 5 different rounds of various layouts. So there were some different that had more lots. And this is one that was settled upon to satisfy the developers' numbers. And they're not here. I can't speak for them. I can speak for what the town did. I mean, there were cul-de-sacs, there were weird layouts, they cut across, and they didn't go through and provide any type of relief for these incredibly narrow roads that they're wedging this in between. This does provide, and they are public right of way is my understanding. So, somebody coming down Waring will be able to cut across to Germantown and vice versa. You know, they're not gonna have to go around the bend. When you look at the location, it does give some additional, they don't have to go whatever it is down at the end. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. But
That's
that being
Simmons.
Simmons, thank you. The more connections you have, the better traffic network you have. It also, with this, hopefully those detention ponds will work the way that they're supposed to and will hold the water and release it slowly. Does the difference between 5 feet and 1 foot, is it huge from a stormwater standpoint? No. The water is, and the grading has been done so that those lots are going to drain to where they're supposed to drain so that it can be released at a predetermined rate. So,
And the size of the concrete is not an issue here. That's within the rules.
yes, they're not exceeding their lot coverage limits.
So the only request they're having is to reduce it from 5 to 1 foot. That's the only thing we're here to talk about.
Correct.
Anyone else have anything to add? Do we have a motion? If we don't make a motion, it'll just fail for lack of a motion.
Well, we need a motion on the table. I'll move that. I'll move that we grant the variance.
Grant the variance?
Yeah.
All right, there's a motion to approve the grant, to grant the variance. Is there a second? I'll second it. Can I do that? I'll second it so we can discuss it. Any discussion?
What's that?
I think we have discussed it.
Yeah,
I don't feel that it meets all four of those. It certainly seems like it's going to be a detriment to Dacia property owners, so.
I feel the same way. It's going to be a detriment, I'm afraid, but then like Tim says, is 5 feet to 1 foot, that big a difference is going to make, I don't know. And why wouldn't it discussed before now?
yeah, and I mean, the reality is that if they do this, then people would be buying houses with that configuration, and it won't be imposed on them after the fact. It's such that whatever issues caused by the by the close location of the driveways is, they'll know it or they won't know it, but they'll look at it.
Yeah, but I just think that if you have that 5 feet there, you move in, you buy this property and you discover an issue, maybe there's something you can do in that 5 feet, additional drainage, something like that to prevent it in the future. Whereas if you allow it to be a 1 foot separation now, I don't think you're going to have that option.
All right, any other discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor of approving the reduction from 5 feet to 1 feet, raise your hand. All opposed? Opposition has it. Thank you. Thank you all. Any other things to discuss? I don't see anything miscellaneous. Tim?
There was not when I published the agenda, but I did want to let you all know that we have a round of revisions going to Town Council and Planning Commission for the UDO, and one of the proposed modifications would be the increase in membership to the Board of Zoning Appeals from 5 members to 7. I know that had been discussed by you all previously as something that you would endorse as being a positive. Having more voices for these types of things is always a better situation. Also reduces the problem with quorums sometimes. That being said, it has not yet been approved. It is going to Planning Commission and then it needs 2 readings of council. So it would not be implemented until next year. So once they approve it, we would have to find members to be appointed.
Okay. Motion to adjourn,
Move to
Second.
adjourn.
all in favor?